What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. So Riot Games has recently released what is technically pretty much their second game ever, Mechs vs Minions, and it's officially earning the S at the end of the name Riot Games. But they definitely aren't done yet, and we've got a lot of information and honestly just theories, clues, and quotes from Rioters here and there that hint about what they're developing for the future, because they're definitely working on some full-scale video games as well, and I'm definitely excited to play some more Riot games in the future. And I think it'd be a pretty cool idea to take a look at what we know so far and potentially speculate and figure out what Riot's future video game that is going to end up looking like. And if you guys enjoyed the video, definitely hit that like button and let's begin. So a lot of people have kind of been on the fence about Riot developing more games aside from League of Legends, just because League is such a big ongoing project and needs so much attention from Riot, alongside with fresh new content, champions, skins, reworks, all sorts of stuff. And considering that they release a patch every 2 weeks and even completely rework old champions a few times a year, it's not surprising that a lot of players probably don't want Riot taking attention away from League to maybe focus on other things. But fortunately, what we know for sure is that any game or games that Riot publishes in the future that are not League of Legends are being developed completely independently to League, which means that it's a totally separate development team. It's not slowing down, it's not hurting League in any way. They might trade developers here and there, but at the end of the day, there's the same amount of people working on League still, and a couple of higher up game designers at Riot have mentioned here and there that they have been tasked with working on, as I quote, projects that they can't talk about whatsoever. I know Riot Morello, I believe, Riot Gypsy Lord for sure, I guess he goes by Riot Groovy Lord now. A lot of the higher up devs at Riot have been moved on to the secret projects that they just can't say anything about, which are of course almost certainly going to be Riot's new games. And of course, on the League of Legends side, those developers get replaced, so it's not like the production slows down or anything like that. They are taking like individuals, specific individual developers from League, but those designers, they get replaced anyway, so the production doesn't slow down at all, and in the long run, it's not going to affect League of Legends whatsoever. So essentially, for every designer or developer Riot moves on to a new project, they hire someone to take their place. And from what Riot have said so far, it seems like whether each new video game is going to be League of Legends related or not is going to depend on the game itself, which leads us to also believe that Riot are working on multiple games. So some of the potential projects that are set within the League of Legends universe, stuff based on the same characters, the same world of Runeterra, but some of the games are also going to be completely separate IPs, new intellectual properties, so they would be standalone, brand new characters, a totally new universe potentially. They're messing around with a lot of things, and if some are more in development than others, but we'll see how it goes. And the really interesting thing we can take from it is that it's essentially confirmation that, again, Riot does have multiple games in development, or at least in the research and development stages. So Riot are officially done now with the release of Mechs vs Minions, of course, so they're done with that game, but it looks like they aren't done earning that S at the end of their name just yet. Now, we probably won't get any teasers or hints overall towards what games will actually be released in 2016. Heck, we might not even find about the bigger projects next year at all, knowing Riot's usual policy stuff on this. That being said, if something was based in the League of Legends universe, it could definitely be realistically released next year to the public actually, or like announced or teased or, hinted at, advertised, stuff like that. And I would be very surprised if we make it through 2018 without seeing another video game released from Riot Games. So far though, we have two major clues on what these future Riot video game productions might actually end up being. So the first one was actually discovered back in 2012 when Riot was acquiring multiple domain names, including ones such as supremacy.com and League of Legends supremacy.com, and a whole bunch of keywords and phrases relating to this whole title of supremacy. So a domain blog noticed that an internet brand production called Mark Monitor had been registering a ton of domains related to Supremacy, which was clearly on the behalf of Riot, who are one of their clients. So Supremacy was clearly going to be a standalone title that was also based around the League of Legends universe, and it was speculated to also be a card game, potentially something that could be compared, or I guess maybe a competitor to something like Hearthstone, but perhaps instead using the lore, using the characters from League of Legends. Now, this was also confirmed to be true again when a hacker got a hold of Mark Merrill's Twitter account actually and shared some secret images that were later verified as being prototypes and other images that Riot had been experimenting with for Supremacy and the design. The client looked very similar to the old League of Legends client, and also featured a tab called Campaign, a tab called Decks, which essentially 100% confirmed that it was a card game, and also as well that it was multiplayer, and that it would have, again, a single player element to it as well though. Now, Supremacy was apparently in the beta stages at the time and had been kind of messed around with the test realms within League of Legends as a card game, but given that we kind of haven't really heard anything about it for so many years, it's actually very likely that Supremacy ended up getting cancelled. If not cancelled, then very serious delays. So the reasons why Supremacy was never released or hasn't been released yet aren't entirely clear, but Riot Meddler once said that the important thing for Riot with new games was really just to they really want to release something meaningful. You know, they don't want to just jump on a bandwagon. They don't want to just release something that's something that's everyone else is already doing. So with that in mind, they might have decided that it was a little bit too similar to Hearthstone, and the timing of the development implied that Riot also might have just been trying to jump on the hype train and later decided against it. But for whatever reason, it seems like the League of Legends card game is probably not going to be Riot's next video game. Now, the second hint into Riot's next video game is a much more promising one because it's something that hasn't been cancelled, and it comes from the purchase that they made earlier this year. So Riot actually bought an entire game studio that goes by the name of Radiant Entertainment, saying that the purchase made sense because the two companies shared similar values. Now, Radiant Entertainment is a studio that is heavily known for creating fighting games, and the founders of the studio have massive ties to the fighting game industry as well. And Radiant is currently continuing kind of like this Minecraft-esque project that was already in development, a game by the name of Stonehearth, but they're also confirmed to have started working on a new game after the acquisition by Riot, and they're super tight-lipped, not revealing anything about this game. So this game is very, very heavily, strongly rumored to be a fighting game based on the League of Legends IP, the League of Legends universe. Now, this comes at the cost of canceling a game actually that Radiant were working on at the time called Rising Thunder, a fighting game that was in the alpha stages, but all the signs point towards the fact that it's pretty obvious that they are working on a League of Legends fighting game. Since they pretty much immediately set to work on a new title instead after being acquired by Riot, this is definitely the most promising sign about what Riot's potential next video game is going to be. Now, it's not 100% confirmed whether this game's actually going to be based on the League of Legends universe or not, but we know that Radiant are hard at work developing a game that will be published by Riot Games in the future, and we know that Riot have also messed around with fighting game concepts in the past. You know, one of their major Thunderdome projects in the past was like a League of Legends Smash Brothers that they tried to port and kind of work out and stuff, and they've definitely experimented with fighting games in the past, and this is something that I definitely expect to see coming in the future. Now, going off of that, it's definitely not clear what type of fighting game it could be, but one really cool concept that showed some promise was actually the result of, again, the event called Thunderdome. So what Thunderdome is the idea is that it's like a hackathon almost. So the idea is for 49 consecutive hours, rioters get free reign to team up and do whatever they want with whoever they want, and it's all about experimentation and coming up with really cool ideas while working with different rioters that usually operate separately within the business, and they do this about once a year usually. So one Thunderdome project that got the League community really hyped up was one team that was working on a fighting game that kind of looked a lot like Super Smash Bros, but with League champions as the characters instead of the Nintendo cast. And the Thunderdome teaser video actually showed a little bit of the gameplay too, and it actually looked really cool, although the video definitely showed that it was way too close to Smash Bros to be an actually publishable thing, even on like a small scale. But later on in the Thunderdome video, we saw that the Smash Bros concept had been removed, and what was left was kind of like a standard 1v1 fighting game, you know, closer to something like maybe Tekken or Street Fighter or something like that, you know, a more traditional fighting game. The footage showed a fight between Zed and Yasuo, and although it obviously wasn't super polished, it really worked as a proof of concept, showing that League champions could definitely be taken out of Summoner's Rift and made to fight in a similar way, while still keeping everything about League that players are familiar with and already love, of course. So a fighting game is definitely something we expect to see in the future. Now, Riot Ghostcrawler has also been a very solid source on Riot's future video games. You know, he's very high up at the company. And although he hasn't given out any specific information, he has given us a lot of fresh insight into what we might be able to expect in the future. So he confirmed on a Reddit AMA, Q&A, whatever you want to call it, that Riot had multiple projects in research and development in various stages in the present day, really, and any one of those projects could potentially make it into production one day. So Riot Ghostcrawlers also said that his biggest hope for Riot is that in 5 years from now, they're going to have just a whole line of games so that, you know, the players get so much more games to choose from to play each day rather than just League itself. He also shared his own personal dream games that he would love to see Riot try to make one day, although they aren't development at the moment, so he actually threw out some ideas that confirm some concepts of things that are not in development at Riot. So the first idea he threw around is an RPG that is mostly focused on party-based combat. So the idea is that right now RPGs have pretty weak combat since the main focus is kind of like telling the story, developing the characters. And Ghostcrawler instead really wanted an RPG where the focus is on like really crazy combat tactics, more like the Final Fantasy franchise where combat's like a massive part of the game. And we're not entirely sure if this idea might work for the League universe, but it is an interesting idea that Riot might pursue one day in the future as like a new idea or just a new concept for a game. The next game that he really wanted to see was like a Diablo-esque game, you know, an action RPG that was based in space, which is definitely outside of the League universe since sci-fi isn't really a part of the world of Runeterra. It's a lot more fantasy-based, you know. Maybe there's like dragons and hextech items, but doing a space Diablo would definitely have to be a different IP, so this again is something that they're not really developing, but who knows, maybe it's something they mess around with in the future. And when Riot Ghostcrawler first started working in game design, he actually worked for a studio called Ensemble Studios on the Age of Empires series, if you guys know that. And he said that Space Diablo was essentially a concept being worked on over at Ensemble at the time, and it ended up being scrapped actually because Microsoft were already developing another sci-fi game, and they thought players would only really buy one good sci-fi title at the time, so they were afraid of the competition. Now, in Ensemble's defense, that game ended up being Mass Effect, which of course was a massive success, but Ghostcrawler is still really fond of the idea of a space Diablo, and he was really pitching it pretty hard, so it's definitely something he's going to pitch to Riot in the future, most likely. Either way, it's something that's definitely not in development right now, so it's not something that we could see for the next 5 years at least. Overall though, Riot's future is looking pretty serious as they are going to expand outside of League, you know, definitely with the fighting game is the most likely one. A card game is not even that out of the reach as well, honestly. Personally though, I'm really hoping for an MMO. I think that'd be so fun. Honestly, a card game as well. I would love to play a League of Legends card game. Those are the two genres that I would definitely have the most fun with for sure. I mean, maybe they'll revive Supremacy or rework it at some point or turn it into something else. Maybe they can come up with a design that's original enough to be worth the attention, but either way, they're definitely working on some huge projects, and it's going to be really cool to see what they come up with in the future. Either way, it looks like that's going to be it for me for our theories on what Riot's next game is going to be. If you guys enjoyed the video, drop a like, subscribe if you want. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.